Hey guys, in this video we got the Creality ENDER-3 S1. So I've done the review on the S1 Pro and that was a great printer, but the S1 here might be a better value as you do get most of the features in this non-pro version. So in this video we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some prints. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started. So the ENDER-3 has lots of names now, and the S1 series is the most ambitious that it's been for the Ender. So on the front here, we got a picture of what the printer looks like, the dimensions of the box, and the shipping label says 12 kilograms, which is about 25 pounds. So let's go ahead and open it up. And this is what we see on top. So we got a piece of paper here that says warm tip, and on the bottom it says retraction speed 35 to 45 millimeters, and retraction distance for PLA is 0.8 millimeters, which is practically nothing, and for materials like TPU, 2 millimeters. So if this is your first time printing with a direct drive extruder, this paper here reminds you that retractions should be very small, under 1 millimeter. All right, so we got the usual dark soft foam. And this is what we see on the top. So we got quite a few pieces here, but with that said, this should be a pretty straightforward assembly as most of the main components are pre-assembled. So right on top here, we got a coil of filament to get you started. Not too crazy about these as they get tangled, but you do have something to get you going with. We got our power cord, which is US type, looks to be about 4 feet. Our spool holder, and this is a top mount that clips onto the channel, and the filament detector is already connected to it. Now there's another piece of the spool holder which connects to here. It's quite simple, and you can put it on either side. But obviously with our filament detector being here, it will go here. So here we have the main piece, which is direct drive extruder, and it's all combined with the hot end. Very nicely constructed. So this looks just like the Pro version, except for a couple things stand out, which this whole extruder piece here is made in a plastic material instead of metal like the Pro. But it all still feels really good and solid and practically identical, it looks like, to the design of the Pro, which is a good sign. We do have a CR Touch here, pre-installed. Parts cooling fan, very nice. Silicone sock on the heater block. Got a junction board on the back of it. And just a very nicely built direct drive hot end assembly. And our main cord will plug in here on the top with a strain relief. We got a Ziploc bag with a bunch of stuff in there, and we'll go through it in a second. Well, it looks like here we got a few more pieces. This is our mount for the screen, and also another clip that goes somewhere on the printer for wire routing. And right under here, we do have the display, and this is where this bracket here connects to on the back of it here. And that's our connecting port. So yeah, this is a pretty typical Ender style display with the rotary knob. So it's not a touch screen, but you do everything through here, which works really well on the other printers. And one thing that kind of stands out is this trim piece is not black, but like a really gray blue color, which is interesting. All right, so that's this layer here. And below that, we got the gantry and the base underneath. So I'm not sure if they're gonna be tethered. Okay, so they are not. So the gantry, which is the upper portion of the printer, it's quite nice. It's got flat channels, which is a good look. And if we flip it around, you guys can see we have dual Z-axis motors, which is great for stability and even Z-axis movements. But what's even better is that we have a belt here on top that tethers them together. So if this side moves, the other side also does through this belt, which is the right way to do it, in my opinion. And I'm glad they implemented this, as this makes it very simple and quite reliable overall. So we're going to look at all the details and features a little bit later in the video. Let's go ahead and pull our base out. which is a pretty interesting design. And again, we got that bluey gray theme on the front here as the cover. And also, if you guys can see, we have a steel PE sheet on the top, and these are probably one of the best build plate materials you can have. And yeah, very nice, clean, low profile. And again, guys, we're gonna take a closer look in more detail here in a bit. So that is everything for the box. As you guys can see, everything was very well packed as usual. So let's move this out of the way and we'll bring the base back in. And I'm gonna pull off the build plate for now so we don't get it greasy or dirty. We'll flip the printer upside down. And we're under here because I wanna show you guys these nice rubber feet and also just a clean design. We got some venting underneath and these pretty cool brackets here that clip into the channel that route the wires on both sides. Very nice touch. So I think I want to go ahead and open up this back plate so we can see what's underneath. So let's go ahead and go through what's inside this baggie. So we do get a warranty card with after sales service, a quick start installation guide, which is on the small side, and it's actually a pamphlet that unfolds. And we got step-by-step instructions there on how to put it together and get it going. So honestly, I prefer a book, but this works fine also. So we do get some Creality stickers, a spatula that's not sharpened, and you don't want to use this to scrape on the bed as it won't do anything for that. But this could be useful to kind of like go underneath the nozzle and maybe like try to get a booger out or something. And here we have another bag with a bunch of other stuff in it, which we have the Z-axis limit switch with a wire. Now, I'm not sure if this is an option. Okay, yeah, so I think this is an optional part, as it says it's a spare part. So this is if you were not going to use the BL Touch, you would need to install this. But because this printer does come with the CR Touch, should I say, which is the probe, you won't need this. But it's nice that they included it as you can revert back to a more manual operation. We get an extra nozzle, which looks like a 0.4 millimeter. Our full-size SD card, a gig with the USB adapter. Here we have a baggie of bolts, which is the hardware to put the printer together. A clean out needle, which is in this foam to protect you from getting poked. We also get some cutters, pretty generic, but very nice to have, especially cutting the filament on an angle before feeding it in. And for the last part here, we got a little baggie of tools, which comprises of some Allen wrenches, a double-ended wrench, and also a little small wrench, and this is for the nozzle, and a little flat screwdriver. So let's go ahead and get the right size and take these little bolts out, which appears to be 9 of them. All right, and that should be all of them. Okay, and it looks like we might have to take out the storage box that's underneath here, which by the way is huge. There we go. And we do have a fan connected to the bottom, and where the storage slides in is actually here part of the back case, and it's all metal. Quite interesting. All right, and this is what it looks like underneath, and you guys can see it's quite minimalistic here. We got this whole area here for the storage that goes in here, and I like how they got these wires very nicely routed and these clips that hold the wire to the channel. So this is the main board. It does have an ARM processor, and you guys can see these stepper drivers. They are integrated and got little heat sinks on them. And I don't see any model number on the board, so I'm not too sure what it's called. But yeah, very nicely organized here with the wiring. You guys can see how everything flows. And we got these holders here everywhere that hold the wires down to the channel. So this printer does use a Creality branded power supply, which is a 350 watt 24 volt. And over here we have the power input to the supply and also the on and off switch. And also the cooling fan is quite large that cools off the board. So yeah, very nicely put together and built. So I'm going to put the lid back on, we'll flip it around and start the assembly. So assembling the S1 is much simpler than it looks. And if we look at the manual, there's only a few steps, and they actually want us to start off with putting the hot end assembly onto the X-axis cradle and also the clip. But I think what we're going to do is skip to putting the upper portion to the base first, and then we'll go back and do this, and then we'll install our screen following by the spool holder. And believe it or not, guys, that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and grab our bolts, and you guys can see we got a few in here. So connecting the gantry to the base, we'll use these large black bolts, and we're going to need 4 of them, but they do include an extra one just in case you need it. So if you guys maybe can tell, but there's little cutout grooves on each side of the base, and that's where the gantry is going to sit, and the bolts go through the bottom into the channel. So it kind of falls in. Let's go ahead and go sideways. So however you got to do this, but basically you grab a bolt and you go underneath. So you can go off the edge of the table, or you can even put something underneath to pry it up. And I got a box of filament here that we can do that with. You guys can see it's quite easy now to get it started. So you're going to need the largest wrench, and all I'm going to do is just run them down and not tighten it yet, I will flip around to the other side and do the same thing here. So I'm just running them down for now, and the reason for that is because we want to run the x-axis all the way down. And so I'm just going to use the belt here in the back to move it up and down. Or you can just grab a coupler and turn it. The belt makes it a lot quicker. And the reason we're going down is because we want the spacing between this channel and this one to be as close as possible to what's already adjusted here. If we bring this down, which by the way, there's something taped here to the side, a wire, we can get a more precise distance between the two channels, and now we can go ahead and snug them up underneath. So you want to go, relatively tight, but you do have a lot of leverage with this wrench, so be careful not to over tighten it. And same thing on the other side. And as simple as that, we got the upper portion connected to the base. So let's bring this back up a bit. And now we'll go to the other steps, which first one is to install the hot end assembly onto this cradle. So I'm going to turn this thing. So if we look at this assembly, we can see here on the side, we have 1, 2, 3 little brass threads there. And those actually will line up right here on this bracket, just like that. So it kind of sits in there and drops in. It actually holds itself. And the bolts that we need are in this little bag called M36. And I believe there are 4 of them. So yeah, pretty straightforward, just putting the bolts through, snug them all up, and that's it. Now our hot end assembly is connected to the cradle on the x-axis. So we also have this clip that goes here on the back, and we'll install it when we do the wiring. Let's go ahead and install the display, which goes right here, and we can go ahead and remove the bracket. And if you guys can see, there's a little cutout here, and these little grooves here actually go into that slot. Yeah, we need 3 of these M418 bolts, which will go through the bracket and then into the channel. I'm gonna prop this up so it's a little easier, and maybe you guys can see a little better. But yeah, again, pretty straightforward, and everything kind of falls into place. And the last one on the bottom, and that's it. And now all we got to do is plug in the display here in the back with this wire that comes out from underneath, just like that. And then we can just clip it on there, and that's it. So for the next part, we're going to be installing this spool holder. And one thing I noticed here is that on the filament detector, it doesn't say which way's in and out. So I'm guessing the plug goes out away, or maybe it doesn't really even matter. And there's a brass bushing on each end. So yeah, the way this thing mounts, it just clips onto the channel. So you just simply put it over and then clip it down. So yeah, it just clips over and goes down, just like that. We can go ahead and plug that in. It just comes out of the channel here on the top. Yeah, you just want to align this part of the spool closer to the middle of the printer, so we probably need to go to the side a little more. And the reason you want it more towards the middle, I guess we are a little limited here on this wire, but in any case, the closer you get to the middle, the more even the filament will be distributed between the 2 ends of the hot end. So because you don't want to have it way too much this way where the filament will kind of try to do this, because as it goes higher and higher, it's going to really bend. And even though this can turn, you want to center it up so it has the least amount of stress as it's running through. And believe it or not, guys, that's pretty much everything that we need to install. I'm going to go ahead and throw these wrenches in here, and I went ahead and put the rest of the tools in here and all the other things that came with the printer. Very nice large compartment. And so the only thing we got left to do is just plug the wiring in. So let's go to this side, and you guys can see we got a main cable that comes out the side of the printer. About midway, we got some wires, and these are for the X motor and the X end stop switch. So the X motor plugs in right here. Let's go ahead and plug it in. And then the X axis end stop switch is underneath here, and we'll go ahead and plug that in. And so this wire continues to go around, and you guys can see there's a little sticker here that shows that it goes into this little clip, and this just literally slides in onto this bracket here, and maybe you guys can see the little rails there. So like this with the hook pointing down, and so this part here can literally go right into here. And the other end will plug in into the hot end. Let's go ahead and twist back around. First, you want to open up these tabs here, and then as you insert it, they'll close onto the plug and kind of clips on. And also we have the strain relief here in the back that we kind of have to insert the flat wire into. And just like that, we gotta make sure it has a good reach, which is great. Plenty of slack. Everything seems perfect. So that's how this wire goes on. Now if we go back around to the same side, you guys can see our X-axis motor here is not connected yet, and the wire is taped down to the base. And we can go ahead and plug that in. So this is one of our Z-axis motor, and we have another on the other side. The Y is already all connected. So let's go ahead and connect this one. Now this one connects a little differently as the motor is already connected to this little extension. And if we look here on the corner, we can see here there's a junction. There's like some rubber caps on here that we need to take off. And so the first one says Z-axis, so that's going to be for this motor. The next one over, which is the middle one, is an expansion port, and this is a 24 volt power supply, which for the Pro model powers the light bar. And so since this one doesn't have the light bar, we're just going to leave that empty. And the last one over is the filament detector, which comes here out of the bottom of this rail, this wire here that was taped to the side that we untaped earlier, and that's simply going to plug at the other end. And we could probably use this cover here to cover up that middle port, since we're not going to use it, and use the snippers here to cut off the other pieces so it's nice and clean and we're not going to have dirt going into the socket. So yeah, and as simple as that, guys, that is all our wiring. Also the one here underneath for the display. So we're not quite done yet because we need to check a few things like our rollers and our belts. So let's start with the rollers here on the bed. So we have 2 stationary and 2 adjustable with the eccentric nuts. And if we go here to the side, and maybe I'll take this off real quick so it's kind of out of our way. And you can do this, you know, before you assemble the whole thing also. Yeah, if you guys can see, there's 2 rollers there and there's eccentric nuts. And so what I like to do is go with my fingers underneath and spin the roller in one spot to check how much tightness there is. And actually mine are kind of tight, or at least tighter than I would like them. And so you're going to grab this double-ended wrench that's included, and we're simply just going to turn the eccentric nut a little bit to get farther and closer away from the channel. All right, so I loosened that one a bit, and now we'll go to the one in the back and loosen it, and that feels a little better. And so what you're trying to get is where the roller can kind of spin in one spot when you do a little burnout. If it's too tight, you won't be able to turn it in one spot. If it's too loose, the whole bed will wobble. So you want to tighten it up ever so slightly where the bed doesn't wobble and there's not so much tension around the channel with the rollers, because if it's too tight, it's going to wear them out, and plus you're not going to get a very nice smooth roll. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. So the other thing we can do is we can also adjust our tension on the belt, and you guys can see mine is quite loose. So we got a knob here up front, but be careful not to over tighten it. If you're too tight, you might get some vibrations into the build plate. You guys can't really see this, or I can't really show it, but on this end here, if you look kind of like from the back this way, you can see the roller inside and see if it lines up. And for the back, there's a little sight right here that you can see how it lines up there. So on mine, it's fine. It's not on the edge. And so on the front, you guys can see we got a couple little bolts here that hold this plastic piece. And if you do need to adjust this, you can grab a wrench and loosen this and then offset it and tighten it where you need it. And you might want to check this anyway because mine was already quite loose. And so that's how you can adjust this piece here to line up the tensioning idler pulley inside to center the belt on it. And for the belt, you don't want it, you know, too tight, because if you make it too tight, you can literally play music on it. If you hear notes, that's too tight. So yeah, all that looks good right there. I'm going to put the screen back on, and now we can flip around. Looking at the back, we have the same situation here with the rollers on the hot end. There's 2 stationaries on top and 1 adjustable on the bottom. And so on mine here, they're a little tight, so we need to loosen it. And there we go. That feels much better. So this should be pretty free and feel really nice and smooth and have no wobble in it. Again, if you're too tight, you want to loosen them up. And if you're too loose and wobbles, tighten them up a bit. So we do also have rollers here on the side that roll on these channels. And these are not as critical, but you want to, you know, get them close. As long as they kind of spin, it's good. So on mine, everything seems to be pretty decent and they all spin. You don't want to mess too much with these unless they're just binding like crazy, because you'll never really get them perfect. And because the Z-axis moves so slow and so little, these are definitely not as critical. And also, I didn't mention that we do need to check our belt here on the X-axis, which actually is pretty good right there, I think. And it feels really smooth. That's what we want to see and feel. I don't really like how we can't see the rollers in here or in here, which makes it kind of a mystery if they're running true or not. It does feel smooth, so I'm gonna think everything is fine in there. I wish they would have made little sights on the top or the side or somewhere where you could at least glance at it. Now I know that you can take this cover off to see. There's a bolt here and a bolt on the bottom if you are curious, but the one on here is completely sealed and you can't really take it apart easily. But yeah, we're pretty much done with putting everything together and checking the rollers and belts. So for the next part, let's take a closer look at the S1. All right, so yeah, the printer looks quite nice on the table here. It's not too large, it's a medium format, but it is a little bit larger than like an ENDER-3. So let's start here on top. We got the spool holder, and you guys saw how mounted, quite simple. It just comes right off and clips on. Got the filament detector. We got brass inserts for wear protection. All of our channels are smooth here on the front. Very nice and clean. Flipping around to the back, we can see we got dual Z-axis lead screws, and they are tethered with this belt, and you can just tug on this belt to go up and down. Here you guys can see where the wire goes to the filament detector, and it's routed down this channel all the way to the bottom and then plugs into this junction. The supports on the top are plastic, but they do have bearings there. And going down, all of this is metal. Same thing on this side, and you guys can see where the wire clip clipped in. Pretty simple. Very nice and clean design. This is our X-axis motor, and we plugged it in here on the bottom, and also the X-axis switch on the bottom there. So 2 Z-axis motors, one on each side with the coupler. The motors do kind of float from the bottom. They are connected with a plastic bracket to the channel. Here we can see the back of the hot end a little better, and this is the roller we adjusted with the eccentric nut being underneath here. And you can guys see the fan blowing underneath the nozzle there, the heat block silicone over it, and also our CR touch over there. Going down, we can see our Y-axis channel, and this is the mounting here. Y-axis motor with the in-stop switch. And to this side, we can see the junction where we plugged everything in with our motor and the filament detection. And on the other side, we have the manufacturing label, which tells us the model number, the build size, 220 by 220 by 270. We also have a QR code here. It says Creality Cloud. And down from the label, we got the on and off switch, the power input port. It is fused. And from the back here, we got a cable that comes out to the bed, and it's very strain relieved, feels heavy duty. And looking at the very back, you guys can see here, we have a sticker that shows us the power voltage selector. So you guys probably can't see very well, but we are on 230 right now. We need to go to 115. I'm gonna go ahead and peel this thing. And we're gonna grab the little screwdriver that comes with the printer. Yeah, we're just gonna toggle it to the other side. And that's going to give us the 115 voltage. We're going back to the front. We got a cap here, the wire here that routes to our hot end assembly. And on this side, we got the adjuster for the X. So on the hot end, we can see how the cable comes in. It clips in right here and it's strain relieved. We have an arm here that releases the tension on the extruder. There's a little brass fitting in there. And also this is a gear that turns as it extrudes. Also a good little indicator to look at when it's flowing. On this side here, you guys can see where we put our 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts to hold it to the bracket. That's the heat break there. This is the motor for the extruder, and it's got a little Ender logo on front of it. Our parts cooling fan does have a nice little metal shroud around it. And on this side, we got the CR touch with the probe. And all the way over here, we have the heat break fan. So looking underneath, you guys can see what it kind of looks like here. Pretty nice. Got the duct coming and blowing underneath the nozzle. And by the way, this is our X in-stop switch for the hot end. So going down from there, we have the build plate, which is this magnetic steel sheet, which is a PE surface. And this works very well, as this is the same one used in the ENDER-3 version 2 Neo. So I really love these because they're easy to pull off. So once you're done printing, you can flex it, pop the print off, and start printing something else. And there's a magnetic mat underneath that. And as we saw earlier, this is 220 by 220 and 270 tall of print volume. And we do have 2 tabs on each side to pull it up. So underneath all that, we have the aluminum heated bed part. And you guys can see underneath that it's not insulated, which is not a big deal for this size. We can see the frame is nice and thick. We got orange springs with large adjustable knobs for adjusting the bed level. The whole base of the printer is very nice and clean. Here we have our Y belt with the adjuster and these little bolts I was talking about, where you can kind of move this thing to adjust where the belt can line up on the pulley. And this is our tensioner. You guys can see we have this nice kind of a plastic bluey gray look. Some bolts here. This is our full size SD card port, and then we got a USB type C port for connecting. So going from there, we can see here we have a pull out storage cubby, and this thing is huge, guys. If you can see how big that is. And yeah, I put pretty much all the things from this printer in here, and it can more than easily fit all of it. And yeah, very nice addition to this printer and integrated seamlessly here into the style. And then going to the side here, we have our screen with this rotary knob, and that's how you can control it. There is a protector here with also a sticker reminding you to change your voltage in the back. So definitely don't forget to do this, as you can damage the printer if you don't check it. So if you live in the United States, you will be on 115, and different parts of the world, is like Europe, is mostly 230. So yeah, make sure you do that. So let's go ahead and peel this off. Got a little glue here stuck from the sticker, I guess. I do like these screens overall, and they're really easy to operate. I wish Creality would go to something a little more slimmer, as these bezels here are starting to look dated. But yeah, from here we pretty much got just a clean side and not much on this side either. So yeah, everything looks quite good and very well built. So for the next part, let's go ahead and home the printer, make sure all the motors and switches work, and also we'll preheat it and level the bed. All right, so I got the printer plugged in the back. Let's go ahead and power it on. And it's booting up, and there it goes. And we can see the UI looks really nice. Let's go ahead and go to prepare, auto home. We'll make sure all of our motors and switches work. So there we have the X, the Y, and the Z. It's going to use the CR touch. All right, so it's all good there. Let's go ahead and preheat PLA, and it starts to preheat, and we can see down here our temperatures are going up on the nozzle and the bed. Parts cooling fan is kind of making some rubbing sounds and being a little loud, and it seems to be going away as it keeps running. But yeah, everything seems to be working, which is a great sign. So this is the usual Creality UI. It's quite simple. You use the rotary knob to navigate and then click on it. So this is print. It's going to read the SD card. And then the prepare has our move, disable steppers, out of home, Z-axis offset, preheat ABS, cool down. So it looks like our Z-axis offset has been set to -2.33, so that's interesting. Also, we got control here for temperature, motion, store configuration, reconfiguration, and reset config. So, and we got info about the printer. So yeah, pretty basic usual Creality UI. And more importantly here, we have the level button. And so we don't want to click this yet, as this activates the out of bed leveling with the CR touch, where it probes the bed. First thing you want to do before you do that is go to prepare and click on move. And on the Z axis, we want to go all the way down to 0. So after doing that, we can go ahead and manually level the bed. So even though this is automatic bed leveling with the CR touch, you want to set your bed manually with these knobs. Now if your bed looks really close and you don't want to do this part, I guess you could skip it, but you definitely want to do this, because the flatter the build plate is, the less offset the probe has to make, and the better chance you're going to have a more even layer adhesion on your first layer. So actually all our motors are locked, and we need to unlock them. And if we go to prepare, there's disable steppers. And now we can move around. Now be very careful on pushing this down, as you'll knock off the Z-axis. So let's go ahead and push this way, and we'll go to this corner first. And I'm just going to use a post-it note. And so we're just going to adjust the 4 corners on the build plate. So mine is actually pre-adjusted quite well. So they seem to get this one out the door pretty close to ready to go. So on this, you don't have to be perfect, as long as it's pretty close, as the CR touch is going to compensate for anything in between. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and click on level. And what that's going to do is it's going to probe the bed and take the offsets and save them into the memory. And as you guys can see, it double taps, and there's 4 points. So 4 times 4, 16 total. Well, actually, guys, I'm actually noticing there's 3 taps. 1, 2, 3. Wow. And as simple as that, our bed leveling is done. So the next thing we want to do is go to prepare, and then go to Z-axis offset, and we're going to measure here and set our offset. So we're at -2.33, and it looks like I need to go down just a little bit more. There we go. So that feels about right. And we ended up being at -2.80. So yeah, now that we're done with that, I think we're cooling off again. Let's go ahead and preheat PLA. I'm going to disable stepper so I can raise this thing up a bit. Well, let's go ahead and put some filament in, and I got this Creality branded PLA matte green color, very nice. So let's go ahead and cut it on an angle so it's easier to feed. And we're going to put it here on the spool holder, run it through our filament detector. And by the way, there's a little light here, a blue one that glows when it's detecting. And then we're going to go down into the extruder, and we're going to push on the release arm to insert the filament into the teeth of the extruder. So since this is a direct drive, this is very simple, and it's nice how it just comes down from the top. So let's go ahead and purge it through. And you guys can see we got the green coming out the bottom. All right. So at this point, we're pretty much ready to print. So let's go back we do need to grab our SD card, and it is an 8 gig. Plugs right here. I love that it's a full size. Okay, yeah, so it plugs in upside down. And let's see if we have any test files in there. We're going to click on print, and sure enough, we have a couple G codes. Well, actually quite a few of them. So we got shake hands, rabbit, handle, cat, and another file there. But I think I know what the rabbit is, so let's just start with the rabbit. And this color is kind of nice for that anyways. So click on that and we get our printing menu. So once it starts printing, we're going to take a closer look at the options we have here. All right. And I'm going to click on tune and go to Z-axis offset just in case we need to go up or down while it's printing. Alright, so it's purging on the side, and so far our offset looks perfect, and there it goes. Alright guys, so yeah, first try there and everything works as expected. So yeah, it seems like Creality never fails, just working right out of the box, at least for me here. So alright, so hopefully you guys can see that, but yeah, here looking at the printing menu, it says printing on top, our file name, which is rabbit, the progress bar with the percentage, 2%, printing time and remaining, and then we got tune, pause, and stop, and down here we have all of our information that's constantly there, which is the hot end temperature, the bed temperature, the speed, the flow rate, the fan, and the Z-axis offset. And on the very bottom we got coordinates of the X, Y, and Z. So clicking on tune, we can adjust our printing speed, nozzle temperature, bed temperature, fan speed, and the Z-axis offset. Then we got a pause and stop button if you want to cancel the print. And that's pretty much it. Pretty simple and straightforward. Alright, so we are printing and it looks okay. Kind of getting blobby over there a little bit, but so not sure how this file will slice, but we'll go ahead and print it out and see how it comes out. And so far everything's looking really good. Alright, so we printed out a couple files, this little rabbit and also this flat handle looking print which was called shake hands. And after I printed I realized what it was for. But let's go ahead and look at the rabbit first. So this is what the little rabbit looks like. It actually looks pretty decent. Now it did start off a little blobby, but got a lot better as it went up. So this filament doesn't seem as consistent as normal, and it's kind of like a pasty finish on it, which is supposed to give it the matte look. So it didn't turn out as good as I would want it, and we did have quite a bit of stringing on the top. And because we didn't slice this print, this is probably why it didn't turn out as good, and also in combination with this filament, it just didn't work out. And so I think we do need to slice our own prints, but before we do that, let's look at this print here. So it's still stuck on the bed. And it's completely cooled off, and you guys can see that it is like a little grab handle, and what this is for the bed. Let's go ahead and break it loose, and you guys can see how good that works. And this filament really sticks to everything. It's kind of gummy, and you guys can see kind of left some marks, but they're not permanent, just surface marks. And this is what it looks like. So it has some supports on the back of it, and we can go ahead and break those off. And we didn't clean it up perfect, but this is what the handle looks like, and this is actually the top, which was the bottom, and this actually mounts right here. And so it's kind of like a little grab handle to pull out the bed. Even though they include the file to print this out, they didn't include any bolts to mount it. There are a couple holes underneath the bed, and I do have this little bolt kit. It's a 3mm or M3. You got different sizes there. So I'm just gonna find the right size to go through this handle and a little bit out the back. So we don't want to go too much because this metal plate, the aluminum, is really thin. So maybe I'll try a shorter one. Okay, yeah, that's perfect right there. So just a little bit to grab it. Let's see if we can get this thing up a bit. So maybe you guys can see there are a couple threads that this handle will attach to. They are already pre-threaded. All right, so we got one side started and now the other. Now, if I knew this was going to be this handle here, I probably wouldn't have printed in this green, but it actually looks pretty nice. And this size bolt here is 8mm long, which seems to be the perfect size for this handle. So yeah, there we go. Now we got a nice little grab handle to move the bed around, and this really helps whenever it's preheated and hot, and so you don't have to, you know, touch it here or anywhere because everything is, you know, really hot. So if you wanted to, you could print this out for yourself. I'm going to try not to forget to leave a link for this kit of bolts, which has been quite useful for projects like this and other things. So yeah, overall, I think the printer is doing great. Everything's printing and working. So I think for the next part, what we need to do is go to the computer, see what's on the SD card, slice our own model, maybe like a benchy and a calibration cube, and we'll see how that turns out. All right, so here we are at the computer and I got the SD card plugged in. So once we open it up, we got a few folders and a bunch of different files. So G codes, the rabbit we printed, and the shake hands. And we also have STL files of different things. Not sure what this is. Looks almost like a foot or something, but yeah, we do also have a handle. And that grab handle that we did print out, the rabbit. I guess some of these are just not rendering correctly on the view. And the typical cat. And we also get a PDF for the material guide of what you're printing, the retraction speed of the different filaments like PLA, TPU, and also the temperatures. So the first folder here is PDF, looks like in many different languages of the user manual, and we opened up the Chinese version. The second folder is software, which includes the Creality slicer, looks like for Windows, but you can download it for Mac also, and I already have that installed. And we got some operational videos. Kind of help you out with certain things like auto leveling and also the manual leveling and just a general unboxing and assembly. So let's go ahead and open up Creality Print. And this is what it looks like. So you can use this or Cura or whatever you're comfortable with. So normally I use Cura, but I'm going to go ahead and do Creality here. So first thing you want to do is choose your printer. And if it's your first time, it will probably prompt you to that. But we're going to go ahead and add printer. And over here we can see the different things that are available. And under Ender series, we have the S1 here. So we're going to add that. Let's go ahead and throw a file in there. We'll do a 3D benchy. And you guys can see the platform here and the build volume. So on the left side here, you guys can see we have our different tools. So right now we're on pick. So if we click on move, we're going to have these little arrows and you can move it around. And then you got scale, same thing. You can scale it up and down. And you can manually enter the parameters here in millimeters or percentages. You got rotate, you can clone the model. So if we clone it, it's going to add another one just like it. And also you can add a letter straight to your prints on top. So the more important things are going to be over here on this side. We can see here we got a couple tabs. So this is our configuration page and then this is our support page. So if you're going to do supports, you can do it from here. We're not going to cover that in this video, but here you have a list of the models that you have on the plate and you can delete them and whatnot else, import and outer arrange, things like that. But what we will be going through is the profile. And so you have 3 standard ones in dynamic, balance, and speedy. So you can just print from here, but if you click down here, you can see there's a edit profile button. We're going to go ahead and adjust a few things. So this is just basic stuff, but we're going to click on advanced settings and we can go through here all of the different parameters. So under quality, I'm going to change the layer height to 0.2 for a little quicker printing. If you want a little cleaner but takes longer, you can leave it at 0.15. In shell, we want to put the wall line count to 3. That'll make our prints look better. And also fill gaps everywhere, I like to turn off to nowhere. You can leave that on if you want to fill the gaps. Under infill, 20% is good. Here we have printing temperatures and I'm going to leave everything the way it is. In speed, we got 50. We'll leave it at that since we print everything in that speed. But initial layer, we can turn that down to 15. So our first layer is not too brushed. So going to travel, got enabled retractions at 0.80. We'll leave it the way it is and you can go up just a little bit or down on the distance. And the speed needs to be 40, which is kind of interesting that it was on 80 from the beginning. So you can also turn on combing, which will kind of help with the oozing, not in skin. And if you hover over it, it explains exactly what it does. In cooling, everything looks good. Supports, you can adjust that here. We're going to turn that off for this print. Build plate adhesion, looks like they have a simple raft, but I like to print with skirt. Depending on the size of the model, usually 2 to 3 lines around. So this is going to print 3 lines around the model and then start printing the model. Then we have special modes. That's going to be a few layers on the bottom and then 1 layer all the way around. And if you want to try that out, like on a vase or something, you can click it and print in that mode. Then we also have experimental. Now if we go back to travel and click on expert up here, since we're on advanced, there's going to be more options that come up. And if we scroll down, you can see it says retract before outer wall. I like to turn this off as the models get cleaner, especially where there's a lot of retractions in small places. So we'll go back to advanced and that's pretty much it. So then we can just save everything we changed. Click save again and we're good to slice now. So we're going to click on the start slice. And here it's going to show us that it's going to take 1 hour and 55 minutes. And here you can look at the preview by clicking start. And if you drag it, you can kind of go through it quickly here. And the different colors here, you have explanations of which part of the print that is. But yeah, if you're done with everything and it looks good, we're going to click on export, choose our destination. I'm going to go straight to the SD card. And if we open it up right here, so let's cancel this preview and we'll delete the benchy, throw in a calibration cube. I'm going to push it back just a little bit, start the slice. And so this one here will take us 35 minutes, so 36. And we can go ahead and save it by clicking export, destination, and save. And that's how you slice a print here in Creality Print. So this is kind of a quick overview. Hopefully it was helpful. So let's go back to the printer, print these prints out, and see how they turn out. Alright, so we printed out the benchy and the cube, and they both turned out really well. So if I haven't mentioned yet, guys, the screen does dim, and then if you just touch the knob, it comes back to life. So let's take a look at the cube first. So here we have the X, looks pretty good. Not much ringing, and also not much ghosting. We got the Y, also very clean, very minor ghosting. We got the X wall, see a little bit of vibrations, not bad at all. And the Y wall, also quite clean. The bottom looks great, and that's the texture the build plate leaves. And the top, also very good. So yeah, I mean, pretty much this is what I expected out of this printer. Let's go ahead and check out this benchy. It's still stuck to the build plate and pops off quite easily. So we got the bottom looking good. The side, you guys can see how well those layers went down. Everything is quite smooth. There's a little bit of layering, but not too severe, but there is some there. You can see it. Practically no ghosting around here, which usually shows up, very minor. And yeah, everything just sitting really nice. The walls look great going up here. Overhangs also very good, including around the arches. On the back there, we can see our box has the slit, and that's because we turned off the fill gaps. And the top looks extremely straight and round. Yeah, even the retraction was not bad at the 0.8 distance, but maybe bumping it up to 1 millimeter might help a little bit, as there's a tiny bit of it. But yeah, overall, very solid prints. So I do want to print out more prints, and especially in TPU, since we do have a direct drive extruder. And also we'll try out spiralized mode and see how this printer does. Alright guys, so these are all the prints that we printed on the S1. And I do have to say, this is a pretty nice printer overall, and has all the right parts and design to be that one and only printer that you need. So we've seen our two first prints, one we installed here to handle, and then our benchy and calibration cube turned out great. So after that, I printed a few more models, as you guys can see. We do have some PLA and TPU, and all the prints were sliced in 0.2 layer height with 50 millimeters a second on the speed for the PLA and 40 millimeters a second for the TPU. Temperature's 200 on the nozzle and 60 on the bed, and everything stuck well, and I had no issues popping the prints off either. So let's go ahead and start with this a little frog. So this is in PLA, and you guys can see it looks really nice overall. All the layers are sitting very evenly, and it looks great, and we have no stringing between the eyes, and overall a very clean, sharp print. I can see a little bit of layering on the lower part in some sections, but other than that, very nice and clean, especially around the little paws here, which is never easy to do. So the next print we got here is also printed in PLA. You guys can see it's a millipede with a bunch of sections and a lot of feet. So it sticks just on those little feet, and you guys can see none of them failed or had any issues, and printed out the whole print, no problem. So yeah, the build plate material sticks very well and then just pops off. But yeah, on this print here, you guys can see the layers are sitting also very nicely. There's a little bit of stringy, but don't forget this is a 0.8 retraction distance, and we could probably bump that up to like 1, maybe 1.2 millimeters to clean it up even more, but this is not bad at all, just a little wisps here and there. But overall, the print itself looks very nice and uniform. So the shark here Also same thing, bunch of different links that come together, and actually there is some function to this one. You got little fins here on the bottom, and this one turned out really nice also. Very clean and even, and what you expect out of Creality printers. So I can see a little bit of layering here and there, not too sure exactly what that's about, and it's mostly on one of the sides. Seems like. Yeah, other than that, it's pretty much perfect. And the shark actually does have a functional mouth that should open. Let's see if we can crack them open. There we go. And it opens. And you guys can see all the teeth printed out very nicely. Nothing broke. So yeah, very cool. Yeah, pretty nice print here for the S1. So the last print in PLA here is a gear. This is actually a functional print that should spin up, but it's frozen at this point. So let's see if we can't break it by using this wrench. And I can tell you guys that is a tight fit in there, so it does go in, but can we break it loose? Nope, not going. So for whatever reason, it fused together between the gears and I can't break it loose. So it seems like we do have a bit of over extrusion. So to fix this, you probably want to turn down the flow rate a bit to compensate for the extra volume of extrusion. And what's interesting is normally Creality printers are more under extrude than over, but this one here is a little bit over, and this could be just my model, or it could be the new Sprite direct drive extruder. But in any case, let's move on to our TPU prints, and we got a couple. So this octopus here was printed in TPU, guys. So it's kind of hard to believe, but it is. And see if I can squish his nose here so you guys can see it as TPU. It's kind of hard to push on any part of it, but it is rubbery. This is a harder TPU, and since there's infill, every part is hard, but it is rubbery. And what's cool about TPU is that everything that you print in it is quite robust, and you can drop it and whatnot else since, you know, it's rubbery. But yeah, pretty amazingly, every little foot printed stuck and is functional even with TPU, and we barely have any stringing. Not bad at all. And you guys know if you print TPU, usually stringing is a concern, but here it is not, and it turned out great. So this was a complex TPU print that I wanted to see if this printer can even pull off, but we have a different TPU print, which is this rocket, and this is a softer TPU, and you guys can see it did finish, but it's very thin because it's in spiralized mode. So we do have some pretty severe layer lines as it was bending all over the place, and you guys can see how soft this is. And I'm gonna just bend this thing and completely fold it up, and it'll pop right back into a rocket. So yeah, we did have a little bit of trouble sticking in the beginning, so I just let it print out and then wanted to see what would happen. Surprisingly, it actually got better as it went up, and even got really good towards the very top. And the reason for that seems like is that the smaller the circle got, the more rigidity there was or something. But yeah, pretty impressive for this print here, all in TPU. And for our last print, we got spiralized mode. And by the way, these two spaceships here are the full height of 270, but it looks like it can print higher, maybe 280 or so. But the advertised 270 is no problem whatsoever. So the plane chip is still stuck to the build plate, and let's see if we can break it loose. Okay, now. Okay, so I just ended up breaking it. I didn't want to move all these prints, but looks like we have to. And now if we flex the build plate, it'll come off easy, and that's the right way to do it. And again, guys, this build adhesion type and the steel sheet is excellent. This is probably one of my favorites here, which is called PE, and I think I might like it even better than PEI. But yeah, this is all in spiralized mode. We did crack it in half here, but no big deal. So the bottom looks great. We got a tiny bit of stringing, nothing major here. Well, actually, no, I don't think this is stringing. This is just excess from the nozzle when it first started. But yeah, if you guys look at the layer adhesion, it's practically perfect. So yeah, in spiralized mode, this thing really is nice. Now there is a little bit of blobs here and there. You guys probably can see those, and I'm not sure what that's about. Now you guys probably see this almost like layers, but that's just filament discoloration. If you look at the shadows, you can see how even that sits. So overall, very even layer adhesion, and even going to the point, you guys can see practically perfect, which is quite impressive. Normally they're melted even a bit on the top, but not this one. So yeah, very nice spiralized print. So yeah guys, as you can see, it's a great printer, prints very well as expected. As far as the build quality of the printer, everything is well made. From the spool holder up here, we got filament detection, to the very nice hot end assembly with the direct drive extruder. We do have the CR touch here for automatic bed leveling. I like how all the cables are routed, very nice and clean. The only thing on my printer here is this parts cooling fan is on the louder side. Either the fan is rubbing on something or maybe it's defective, but it does quiet down as it runs for a bit. We do have adjustability for the belt tension on X and Y. The dual Z axes that are tethered with the belt on top is great. Again, I love the build plate on that steel sheet. Very reasonable size of 220 by 220 by 270 tall. Full size SD card, very nice. And the design of the printer, as you guys can see up front, very cool looking. I actually like it better than the S1 Pro. And another thing that's awesome is this large storage tray, and also the printer sitting on large rubber feet which minimize vibration and noise, and this nice little display here with the rotary knob, very easy to use and quite intuitive, and it does dim down after a bit to preserve itself. And also you get all the features like power loss recovery and overheat protection. So yeah, I think this printer pretty much does everything what's expected. And if you wanted something with direct drive and have all the features and didn't want to go for the S1 Pro, the S1 here seems to be the sweet spot between the ENDER-3 version 2 and the S1 Pro. And also I've seen this printer go on sale where it makes it very compelling. So if you're just getting started or a seasoned printer, this thing's a great option. Very easy and quick to assemble and get going. So if you are interested, I'm going to have some links in the description. Check it out. And if you did enjoy this video, then hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos, I reviewed quite a few Creality printers. Check out the 3D printing playlist. And also guys, I do have a new channel called Just Print, where eventually I'm going to move everything 3D printing there. So if you can check that out, I'd really appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.